nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerds.
Hello everyone and welcome to Black Girl Nerds Talk, and we're here. It's Star Wars review.
We're alive.
We're alive. Hello everyone.
Yeah.
Hope you're well. But we're here just in time for the Star Wars review, and we're here. So I guess we're just gonna get started. I feel like I have so much to say. I don't even know where to start. But I guess I know we're like, but just to start, what were your general impressions of the film, you would say?
Well, before I say my general impressions, I think it's very fitting that we're reviewing this because, especially at the end of the year, because our first one was like a Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Like it was Rogue One. So I always think
totally.
It's like, yeah, that was like our first real video. So this is awesome.
Circle of life.
Circle of life. Disney. Yeah, so I think I'm still even thinking about what my overall feelings of the film are, because I do want to see it again. I've only seen it once.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I can describe it is that when I left the film, I wasn't sure how I felt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
In a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think overall the reason I say that is because it wasn't what I expected it to be. And I think for a long time we've been watching movies where you're just waiting for these beats to hit. You're waiting for, okay, that's gonna happen. Okay, that's gonna happen. Okay, we've been waiting for that moment. Oh yeah, that was in the trailer. And this movie was not like that at all. And I'm sure we're gonna kind of talk about it, but I think that's like a lot of why there's so much controversy with the film on how people feel about it, because it's not what I thought it was going to be. But my overall feelings was that I really enjoyed it. I mean, I was like, it's been a long time since I've thought about a movie past after, like, the moment I saw it. Like, I was like lying in bed, like,
It's ruined my whole schedule.
You'll text me every day, like,
I
I'm
know.
still thinking about Star Wars. I'm like, okay, girl, I'm working.
I text this every day with another thing I have to say about Star Wars. Yeah, so like this is, I'm biased because I'm a Star Wars stan. I admit it, but I feel like even with Rogue One, we critiqued Rogue One pretty fairly and everything like that. But this movie has been the first. So my big complaint all year is that these movies like evaporate as soon as you leave. Like I couldn't tell you what happened in Thor Ragnarok. I couldn't tell you what happened in Justice League. I couldn't tell you what happens in most of the movies I saw this year. It's crazy how I even forgot that Guardians of the Galaxy 2 existed. Like there's like they just come off, and so I just love the fact that this is a movie that you could like think about. A movie with a theme, what a novel concept, an actual theme, and like stuff to chew on. So for me, it's one of those things where I had problems with the film, just like everybody. It's not a perfect film. None of the Star Wars movies are perfect. I wish we would all stop saying that.
I know, like let's not act. Like how many of you have
act.
Complained about the Ewoks? Like every time I look at the blogs, like come on.
It's just I don't know. That could be a whole nother video, but like I think that overall the impression was just so like it was just such a great movie experience. It was so striking, and I just really respected everything that it did. So maybe let's go into what we liked. Also, spoilers.
Yes, this will be spoilers. We're talking about everything.
There's no point of reviewing this film without spoilers. I don't understand. So let's kind of get into, maybe let's start with the positives. Let's start with the negatives. What should we start with? Positives or negatives?
Negatives.
Let's do negatives. Yeah. Okay, so let's do negatives.
Let's do negatives.
So I've seen the movie twice, and I know I was like, oh, can I see it again? And so my negatives are kind of the things that even people who really hate the movie have been saying, in that the movie sort of kind of jumps around a little bit, which again is very Star Wars. It's also very Lord of the Rings, which is what this movie really reminded me of, was like a Lord of the Rings movie, or like all the fantasy. It was like a fantasy epic versus like a sci-fi epic. which I think maybe threw people off. I thought like my biggest complaint with the movie was the kind of like quest that Rose and Finn went on, because I was just like, what is this? Like, where are we going? What is this? Where are we? You know what I mean? But, well, I'll talk about why it's a positive too, but like, when I saw it the second time, that part of the movie still doesn't really get me, but the kids in my audience loved it, right? So one of the things that I was talking to Liz about in a text was that these movies are supposed to be for everyone, and if that part of the movie wasn't in it, then what would kids latch on to? They're not going to latch on to the sexual heat that is Rey and Kylo Ren, the erotica in motion. They're not going to get that. They're not going to care. So we need like scenes like that, but I felt like it was a little inconsequential. So I think that was my biggest critique of the film, was that specific storyline. And then I'll go into some other ones, but what's your biggest critique, you think?
I'd basically echo the same thing. That whole thing didn't do anything for me. That whole storyline didn't do anything for me. And not only did it not do anything for me, it was kind of pointless, because like they do all this stuff and then the result doesn't help anything. I mean, if you see the movie, you'll see what basically, and then they kind of don't follow the plan either. And that's another thing about, like, that's what I'm saying about this movie. It doesn't follow the beats you think it's going to hit. Mm-hmm. So you think they're going to do something, but then they go off and do something else. Mm-hmm. But then what they do is just like, why did you do that? You just like, there's no point. And we talk about these things all the time, but I didn't like, in the story, Finn wakes up and he's like, oh, where am I? What am I doing? And his first thought is to go to Rey, which makes sense, because like you just like, what else would he do? And then like they kind of like just like shut it off, and he goes on this other adventure and like doesn't even really think about Rey. And I felt that just in a narrative way didn't really make sense. Like I wish the side story would have been more connected to what was going on with Rey and Kylo and Luke Skywalker. They're just like two totally different stories. Like, I'm not saying that he needs to be like crying over Rey all day, and like he doesn't need to be Katniss 2.0 looking for where's Peeta, but I just wish Peeta. It was I just wish it was more connected, because ultimately like those two storylines are just like passing in the night. And I know they do get to the same place, like it gets to the same place, but the stories are still so separate. And I just would have wished there was more connection between the two.
I agree. And I think it's hard but you also want like the Star Wars atmosphere stuff. So I understand why they did it, because you want the planet, you want the creatures, you want these things. But it's like, it's just not a choice that I would have made, but I can see why he made that choice, and I'm fine with it being there. It's just like not my favorite thing. Yeah. But like, on the other hand, like if you're looking at this at a sort of a bigger perspective, then the movie is very dark without it. So I kind of get why they wouldn't put them on the ship immediately, because otherwise it's just sort of like darkness. It's like all the black. I mean, I do actually kind of like the aesthetic, the black and the red. It's very me, actually, but, it's, like, very dark. So I think that's definitely a concern. Another concern is mine. I just don't like the direction that Finn's character is going in general. Like, I feel like they don't know what to do with this character. I had issues with him in Force Awakens as well. I think they just love John Boyega. He's great on press tours. He's so engaging. He loves Star Wars. Same thing with Gwendolyn Christie. They both are so, like, selling the movie, so they want to do something with them, but they don't know what to do them yet. Yeah. So I think it's hard, because if they weren't there, I think we would be mad, but also they don't really know, because you could tell what Rain was into, right? He was into what I'm into. The Rey Kylo, like, that's what he likes. He likes that part, and I think everything else was kind of just extra on top of it. So I think that the Finn character was really not utilized well, again, which is frustrating. But because we don't want him to come off as like a diversity hire, we want him to really be doing things and whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, those are my biggest concerns with the film.
Well, it's not even just with Finn's character. It was that whole storyline in general. It just seemed like I mean, and I guess we could talk about the storyline. It's this whole, I don't know, it was like this weird, they're trying to find this code breaker because they're trying to shut down the ship.
Right.
That Ray eventually gets on in another way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is a Snoke ship? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we remember this movie, right? Yeah.
We do.
So,
yeah, I mean, we know.
Yeah, but so they're trying to get onto this ship and they're trying to shut it down because basically that would stop them from being annihilated by the whatever. And so even that story kind of takes a detour into saving the animals and like this social justice like story. And I'm like, I don't see y'all doing that with nobody else. Like, I don't like, you know what I'm saying?
You put the
like,
two minorities and we're talking about social justice.
Right. You put them off into the story where they're finding a code breaker. Cool. They're doing something like legitimate, but then they stop and like talk about this whole thing about class warfare and you know, who treats who badly, and I just felt like it just wasn't. It's what you said. That wasn't what he was into. He was like, okay, let me find some story that will be touching to the kiddies. Yeah, like let's sell toys, let's make trick creatures, and you know, do that.
Which I'm fine with it.
But then it's weird because like they're both of the characters, the woman who played Kelly Marie Tran and John Boyega are Rose.
So
they're both.
You watch it.
They're both very great to watch on screen. They both have this like jovial, light, like you want to watch them. So I'm not mad at it, but it wasn't my favorite at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't like. It's one of those things where I think somebody would say it was like, it wasn't my favorite, but I wouldn't take it out. That's how I feel.
Yeah,
like I wouldn't take it out, but it wasn't my
because
favorite.
that was the part where we got to kind of see more of.
Yes.
You know, somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely have to like not use too much like movie math on it, like too much logic for how they got there and stuff. But it was fun. Yeah.
So should we change gifts to what we liked?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like I said, I love this movie. I think it was just so fun. I mean, I really like what they did with Kylo Ren's character the most. I know, hot take. I was telling Liz that I think that Kylo Ren is sort of like more satisfying to watch his journey than Darth Vader was. I know that's going to make people, but I feel like people agree with it because Darth Vader and Kylo Ren are both villains of their time. Darth Vader is a company man who's like really committed to a big cause and whatever, which is very post-Vietnam, like very of that time. And Kylo is very millennial, where he like wants things, he's entitled. He feels like, I'm not just going to work for you. Like, why should I listen to you? Like, I have all these other things that I want to do. And I just thought that he was so good. Adam Driver can, like, act his fucking ass off. I was just like, okay, sir, just, like, act. And, you know, and he really seemed to take the character and give it more. Because I agree that Kylo last movie wasn't quite there. He just was, like, a little more whiny, and we didn't know why, but this one he sort of seemed to kind of really grow into the character and do good stuff with it. So one of my big things that I loved was the Kylo development. What's one big thing you loved?
I loved and really appreciated Luke Skywalker's story. I think I'm very new to Star Wars. I mean, and I felt like his story is just very appealing to me, even in the original trilogy. Mm-hmm. But I was very touched by the conflict in who I felt. Yeah. It was like really real, and I felt I was impressed by the conflict. I was impressed by the concept of you're still learning, even if you've kind of become this legend and someone who people look to. Yeah. The concept of accepting failure was extremely touching. I feel like I'm not grabbing the right words, but extremely meaningful to me in a story. And I feel like at this time in my life, it just really resonated with me. And to see us, and I felt. I think I was surprised and pleasantly surprised by how emotional and sentimental this film was. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of like the pushback. It's very emotional. It's very, I saw in another review of this, they said it's like one of the most spiritual of the Star Wars films. And I feel like that's where the strength lies in the mythology of Star Wars, is the kind of force and the conflict between dark and light and making mistakes and how those mistakes affect things. And I just really saw that in Luke Skywalker. I feel like that was probably one of the best arcs that's been in all of these movies.
Absolutely.
And it was just really, really touching, and it wasn't what you expected. It didn't end how you expected it was going to go. And his story doesn't evolve the way you think it's going to go. So
no, he's still over it, man.
Yeah, I thought his story was extremely effective, and I thought down under that, I kind of felt like Rey and Kylo were kind of two sides of like a manifestation of his journey, and kind of like kind of like which way he can go. And it was amazing. Like that whole story, like that, if that was just the movie, it was everything to me.
I agree. And I think that people hate it for that too. Like people really are, that's one of the things they're really pushing back against is Luke Skywalker, which if people are really watching the movies, that's how Luke Skywalker is. He likes shortcuts. He's kind of cocky. He thinks he can do things that he maybe shouldn't do. He did that the whole series. And so as you grow up and as you get more powerful and as more things happen to you, of course he's bad with failure, because if you're that cocky and you feel like you're on top of the world and you're that in charge of everything, when something bad happens, you don't know how to recover, which is a very human thing. So for me, it makes sense for him to act like that, because
and you see it in the previous movies. He gets this power. He has trouble learning. And then
all of a sudden he's wearing all black and all this stuff.
And he really is feeling himself. Like, he's doing flips and everything. Like he's really feeling himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he realizes like, oh wait, I'm not where I need to be yet. Like I don't know everything. And I think I really appreciate Luke Skywalker always consistently being humbled, especially in this day and age. Like he's always humbled. He was humbled back in the day, and he was humbled again. But then like he came back and was a boss like at the end. So I loved it. I really appreciate. I'm like gushing over it because I loved it. And that was probably my favorite thing of it. I haven't really actually been looking too much up about the criticisms and what people didn't like about it. I mean, I've kind of just listened to different people's critiques, and I've heard like Movie Logic type critiques about it, and then like
whatever, it's a Star Wars,
and then I've heard a lot of people complain about the action in it, and then like how kind of things played out. But then I'm like, these complaints that you're making now, wasn't that the complaints that you had about the original, like not the original, but those first prequels? Like you said that there was too many action, like you said that there was too much CGI, you said that it was like action with no substance, like you said all this stuff, and then you get a movie where there's some action, more substance, and like more sentiment and stuff, and then you're mad. Like, so what will make you happy? Like, I feel like, like, what will make you happy?
Nothing. I mean,
I don't know.
Just really, the whole nature of the internet and everything has made people very demanding on art in a way that they really shouldn't be demanding art to be. I think it's hard because a lot of these action movies are the same, right? So like they are the same plot. Like literally all the Marvel movies are the same. All the DC movies are the same. They basically all the same plot. Like a big bad comes. He has an object, we get rid of the object, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's all the same. So people have kind of given up critiquing those because it's what they're used to. So when you give them something different and it doesn't match their expectations, they freak out. And I think the thing is that people are very possessive over Star Wars specifically, and they have a mindset. And also, the biggest problem is that Rain cares about things that the Star Wars fans as a whole don't care about. The Star Wars fans are, like, obsessed with, or not all of them, some of them are obsessed with theories and, mystery boxes and who are these people, how are they connected, whatever. There's this kind of like Reddit style of the internet. We saw it with Serial and all these podcasts. People just like to investigate, and Rain is like, I don't really care about any of that shit. Like, I just want to, you know what I mean?
Well, we see that with, I will say I was kind of disappointed by this because leading up to this movie, it's like, who's Ray's parents?
Yeah.
Who's Ray's parents? Who's Ray's parents? And then it's like, just like this kind of throwaway.
JJ though, yeah. I liked it though. I liked that they were nobody. To me, that like goes with the theme. It's just hard because when you have two different directors.
I'm not mad that they weren't nobody. I just wish that the finding out that they were nobody was a little bit more impactful.
That's true, yeah.
Like, because, I mean, and I guess they're different directors, so different takes on it. But I think I would have just liked a little bit more of like I don't think she did but she didn't really find out because it was like one of those things like you already always knew. So I think I would have appreciated a little bit more like, like what? They're nobody all this time? Maybe just a little bit. Like, that's not a huge critique. But then it goes back to like this director not really caring about what you think about what Star Wars is supposed to be. Yeah. But I appreciate it because a lot of people, especially to someone who's newer to the whole Star Wars thing like me, will watch these theories and see critiques on not even just like this movie, but other things like Star Wars Rebels or different things where there is a lot more critique of the Jedi way. Mm-hmm. And I think people feel very, like you say, like possessive of it. And people are like, oh, well, Jedis would never do that. Jedis would never do this. Jedis would never do that. And I'm like, exactly. That's why there ain't none of them left. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
yeah, they suck.
That's the whole thing. They kind of weren't good at their job. Yeah. Like, I mean, and then like Luke Skywalker kind of reads them. Like, they just let this dude like take over Darth Sidious or whatever. Like, he was like there in plain sight. Like, how did you not know? I thought you had the Force. Like, so it's like, what is like, how did you not, like, I thought y'all could move lightsabers and whatnot, but you couldn't have said,
and
like,
it's a commentary
this guy with the hood you didn't
know.
Right, yeah. Right, and I think that goes to also like these movies not being they're fantasy movies. Like, there has to be a suspension of disbelief, and of course there's going to be things that we like and don't like, but overall, like, I really went away from this movie like, whoa, this was not what I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it. I do agree. I think there was this thing where they had to put certain characters in the movie because people would have probably like, there's not going to be Poe, there's not going to be Finn. Yeah. And it was just clear that is not the story that Rian Johnson? Rian Johnson, yeah. Yeah, wanted to tell, but I was here for the story he wanted to tell. Yeah, but I just felt like the other stories were just very inconsequential. Also, something I loved was General Leia.
Or Leia.
No,
I was gonna say both.
Oh, you liked him? He was funny.
I
thought he was funny. I just think he's like funny in weird moments where I don't know if other people thought it's
George Lucas original Star Wars character.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the campiness of like that, all of that. So
I love Leia too.
Yeah. Did you like the part where she like uses the Force? You said you didn't like that part.
Like that part.
I liked it. Okay, whatever.
I thought it was like random, and I was just like, So that was one criticism that I totally like. It just felt like it came out of nowhere. I was like, why put her? Like, how does that add to it? Especially since she doesn't use Force anymore throughout the movie. So I'm like, why is this in here? So I didn't like that. I think it was more of a
I think she uses it. I think she uses it another time, like later.
Yeah.
Like briefly, but
yeah. I'm trying to make sure. Did we talked about? Yeah. So we didn't talk about. Yeah, like I said, I really liked Kylo Ren. I really liked Luke Skywalker. I really liked the space Skype between Kylo Ren and Rey. I think the effectiveness of that storyline depends on sort of like your experience and enjoyment of erotica. That's what I've decided. Like, if you're used to stories like that and you read smut, you were here for it. If not, you probably were like, this feels irresponsible. I am a huge smut reader, so I was like, yes. yes, but I know a lot of people were not here for it. Tumblr
I was here for it. I was here for it.
I was like, this it was very sexy to me.
It was very, yeah, it was so much sexual tension. I was definitely here for it. I was uncomfortable by it. I was like, why? I don't understand these feelings.
I wasn't uncomfortable at all. I was like,
this is so wrong, but it's so right at the same time.
Yeah, and the throne scene is probably one of my favorite scenes of any Star Wars. Like that whole scene was just like, I was clapping.
It was beautiful.
I wanted to cry. I loved it so much. Like the color,
it was beautiful.
The way it looked, just the idea of them fighting back to back, like the character dynamics. Like, you know, she's just going and he's just going. They're not even worried about each other, like equals. And it kind of represents them in the stories because they're kind of equals in light and dark, so they're able to like take care of their business. And I just thought it was so. It was
beautiful.
It was really good. So I think
beautiful.
For that scene alone, it's kind of like Rogue One, where for me, the Darth Vader scene was like everything for me. This was, I think I liked
that was everything
even more because of it.
I loved the Darth Vader scene because I think you liked Rogue One a little bit more than I did. Like I was like, oh, okay. Like,
but looking back at it, it definitely has. I think I talked about the problems I had with it.
Yeah,
it definitely has problems.
So.
I love this way more than Rogue One. I think I also liked this more than Force Awakens because I'm one of those people who feel like the biggest problem with this new reiteration of Star Wars is that we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I was ready for something different. I was ready for us to kind of take it in a direction because I felt like Star Wars Force Awakens was great and it was fun, but it was just a loop. It was just like we're doing the same stuff over, and I was like, well, then what's the point of redoing these movies? So I think that, even though I still love it because I'm a Star Wars fan, so this was, I think, the first movie that really felt like we're actually taking a step beyond what George Lucas would do in his decision-making and trying to do something new. I really think that the kind of idea of kind of really being real about the Jedi legacy and being real about the decisions that have been made, because so far the movies haven't really, you know, talked about the fact that these people are all big fails. Like we said, like this has been a big failure, and how is it that we're here again after all that stuff that happened in the last Jedi? Like, how are we here again? So I think that it's really interesting how he honors that while also saying, okay, we need to get rid of all that and start over.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, when you watch the film and you see some of your favorite people come back and be like, oh, you want to burn this down? Yeah. Don't worry. I'll do it for you.
Oh my gosh.
I was cracking up. I just was like getting my whole entire life.
I know. Yoda was like, yeah, I mean, honestly.
Yeah, he was just like, okay.
We're not that great.
Let's do like, let's do this.
I mean, obviously, I'm here, I'm dead, and a lot of bad things happen, so something needs to change. And I think it's just a message it's very a now message, too. And I think the reason why people also are having problems with it, because it's a very progressive now message, because it talks about how, you know, so much of what's happening in this country is about legacy, legacy, and people, the way things were, and like all this stuff about these established systems. And it's so ironic how so many of the nastiest people against this movie are the same types of people who kind of are doing the other stuff, right? Because it's just this idea of like, don't touch what I love, you know what I mean? This is all whatever. And the whole thing with, you know, Kylo Ren is a result of the danger of putting other people's intentions and goals and visions and legacy on somebody who doesn't want it and wants to do something else or has another vision for themselves. And so I think that's a really interesting thing to look at with this day and age and what's happening about how everybody's being shackled with the previous generation's problems and all that stuff. So I thought that was interesting.
I agree. I think this, I said this to you too. I think that this movie, the response to it kind of reminds me of what people said about how the response was to Empire Strikes Back. So
it's exactly the same. Yeah.
Because people didn't like it when they saw it. They were like, oh, it's so dark and like, what? The cliffhanger? What are we doing? Yeah. So I wonder how people will feel about this one in hindsight. I think it's going to be one of the better
I think it's going to be one of the top
movies.
3 or 4. I think people need to see it again I think it just takes a while to settle in. It's still going to have the Star Wars problems that all the Star Wars movies have, but upon second viewing, even the parts that I didn't appreciate before, I really appreciated the second time around. And we have to start rewarding people for taking risks. Like, I feel like every time somebody takes a risk, it doesn't work. And if we keep reacting this way when people try to take chances with these movies, we're going to start getting shitty movies, or they're going to be the same movies over and over again. So we have to kind of like reward innovation, at least for him trying something new. But yeah, I could see why people have problems with it, but the fact that people are so upset about it is just a result of people trying to hold on to, I don't know what they're holding on to, because this felt like very George Lucas to me. I don't know, like it felt like something he would do, but just different decisions being made. So yeah,
I enjoyed it.
I loved it. I
want to see it again.
I want to see it again. Yeah, I want to see it a third time. I loved it, and I think that's it. Let us know what you thought about Star Wars in the comments below. Are you excited for the next one? Are you excited for... I feel like JJ is going to probably bring us back to all agreeing, because JJ Abrams is a very, like, fan-friendly director. So
is he going to do the next one?
Yeah, he's doing the whole... I just hope that Rain gets to keep his trilogy, because the director of this movie is supposed to get his own trilogy, and I would really love to see what he would do.
Another Star Wars trilogy?
Yeah, but just like different characters and something different.
Oh, because yeah, I think he wants to do something different.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think I'm excited. I enjoyed Force Awakens. I really enjoyed this one, and I'm ready to see the next one when that comes out.
I just love Star Wars, and I love all the movies. Like, I just can watch them all, so it's all good with me. We're just talking about it. But yes, let us know what you thought below. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerds. Better shake your booties for black girl nerds.